Well, we finally made it. We are now on part 5 in this 5-part series on the Kreg Precision Router Table build out and upgrade that I've been doing. And as you can see from the stuff laid out on the table right now, today is going to be about accessories, and specifically upgrade accessories, things that really make this tool nice to have around your shop. So for those of you out there that like to jump ahead and, just check out certain parts of this video, these are the main things we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be adding a upgraded dust collection system to this table. We're going to be taking a look at some feather boards, and we're also going to install a Kreg start-stop switch to it just to make it a little bit safer and easier to use. Then at the end of this video, we're going to be looking at things like push bars and setup blocks and just general little accessories that make it much easier to use a router table in general. Okay, let's get started with the dust extraction upgrade. And if you're interested in seeing the other videos in this series, you can just click on right up here somewhere and it will link you to the entire playlist. I've been pretty impressed so far with the Kreg table and the accessories that Kreg offers for this router table, but the one thing I didn't see were too many options for dust collection. The table itself does come with a dust kind of collection hose fitting on the back, but that really only deals with this spot right up in front where the router will kick dust up against the fence. There's still a lot of space for the dust to fall through and underneath the table. And since I put a storage shelf under there, I don't really want dust and wood shavings getting all over the stuff I'm storing and having to clean it all the time. So I took a look around at what options were available on the market, and the one that interested me the most was this Dust Right dust bucket that Rockler sells. What this is, it's a bucket that can work with any router table, and it encloses your router. So anything that comes out of the router drops down through the gaps and the spaces from the top will collect in this bucket and can get sucked on out through your dust extraction system. Just get rid of that box for now. I'm pretty impressed by the parts that they sent. I mean, this is no lightweight aluminum. This feels pretty heavy and durable. The kit I bought, and there are a couple different kits on their website, came with this short hose, and this is to connect the fence dust port with the one in the box, which is this piece right here. Then that all gets connected to your main dust collection line. So I will spare you putting 1,000 screws into this box to put it together, and I will just show you what it looks like done. So when it's all assembled, it's a pretty substantial box to enclose the router, so durability seems really nice. And the way this works is once it's attached, you just access the router to make adjustments by opening this door, and then you close it up. Now the next thing to do is to attach these brackets right here so that we can attach this to the bottom of the tabletop. And it also comes with these little dampeners, and these just stick on the top of these brackets, and what they're really for is to make it so that any vibration coming from the table doesn't add to the overall noise of the table by rattling this metal box. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach the dampers to the brackets, but I'm not going to attach it to the box yet because it does have the option of attaching these brackets to the front or to the sides, and I'm going to have to take a look at the bottom of this table to see which way works better for me. Again, benefits of a universal box is it has some flexibility on how you can attach it to your own table. So you just put a few screws in and you're done. And just like that, the Dust Right box is installed. Now I wish it was that simple, but it really wasn't. This required a little bit of finagling to get it to fit into the Kreg router table. Now, this is not a video about installing this, but I'd feel really bad if I didn't give you at least a couple of hints. So while I flip this table back over, we'll rewind a bit and I'll show you what I had to do. The first thing you'll encounter on the bottom of this table is that the Kreg tabletop has these 2 blue struts. So that means you can't use the wings of the box to go to the sides. They have to be forwards and backwards. Okay, well that part's easy. The second thing you'll notice is that you'll hit these little plastic pieces used for adjusting the table. Now, I've seen a lot of reviews where people said they've had to return it because it doesn't fit a Kreg table. Well, that's not true. It will fit the table. You just got to make a couple adjustments. And what I did was made a couple brackets out of MDF. And if you can't make a few brackets out of MDF to attach this box, you probably shouldn't be nearly 1 hour into a series on router tables. I've notched them out so that they could fit around the adjustments for leveling the router plate. And I screwed them down with 4 screws. I made the spacers out of 3/4 inch MDF, and the door just barely cleared. But depending on the tolerances, it may be a little tight, so maybe you want to use something a little bit thicker when you build these. Once that was done, I just bolted the box to the table using a few screws and some rubber washers. I used the rubber washers just to make sure that the box didn't vibrate out of place or shift a little bit as the router table is being used, but those are probably completely optional. Once that was done, the box works just fine with a Kreg router table. It really wasn't that hard connecting the box to the router table, so the rest of the steps were really easy. All we had to do was connect up the exhaust port from the fence to the back of the box with the hose that came with my kit and the included clamps, and then just attach the plastic piece to the back of the dust box. So there's really just one last feature of the box to talk about, and it does have this adjustable flow control, and what that's for is just to adjust the amount of suction on the table. Now the next upgrade is definitely part convenience and part safety, and that is this Kreg multi-purpose on-off switch. The convenience factor is easy to see. It makes it so you don't have to go under, and in my case, open the dust box to turn the router on and off. You can just do it from the side of the router table. But as you can see in this video, it does have a safety feature as well. As you go down to reach to hit that on-off switch underneath the table, your face comes really close to that bit, and if there is anything on it, it is really easy to kick it back into your face or into your eyes. So this allows you to stay much further from the bit when starting and stopping the machine. The switch just activates by pulling this out, and then you push it back in to stop. It also has a nice safety feature in this little yellow key that once it's removed, the switch can't be used. And that's something that's pretty nice, especially if you have kids like I do. So without the key plugged in, you really can't operate the router table even if it was to be plugged in. Installation of the switch is really quite easy. There are 2 power outlets on the back, so you can not only plug the router in, but you can also plug in an accessory like a vacuum or a light to turn on simultaneously when you hit the power switch. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and plug the router into the switch, and then it just screws right here onto the side of the table. So that finishes up upgrade number 2, and you can see that's a pretty nice one. It's both convenient and does add a lot of safety when operating this machine. So that brings us to the third and final upgrade, which is going to be featherboards. Generally, I like to stay with one manufacturer when I'm doing something like this, but in this case, I found these from Jessam, and they had one really nice feature that the Kregs didn't, and I will show you that as we get these installed. This is the Jessam Featherboard Twin Pack. So out of the box, it comes in this double stack configuration, and this is for wider or taller pieces of material so that you can get extra surface. Featherboards work by applying pressure to the material so that you can slide it safely through or past the bit in this case, and keep your hands further away. So it's a safety feature, but it also helps make straighter, cleaner cuts by keeping more even pressure. So out of the box, it is doubled up and comes set up for a miter slot, which this table has in the front, so it can just slide in and you're ready to go, like this. So the big feature of these featherboards that sold me on them over other ones on the market is that most featherboards only have 2 controls up top, and that is for both locking and releasing the featherboard so you can adjust the pressure. In this case, there are actually 4 knobs. So 2 of them are for locking and securing the featherboard to the table so that it doesn't move, and the other 2 release the featherboards themselves so you can adjust the pressure against the work material. Having these 2 functions operate independently makes it a lot easier to set this featherboard up. Now, the second thing I really liked about this featherboard is that it actually comes with the hardware to split this apart into 2 separate featherboards. And not only that, it has the ability to work with both miter slots and T-track, which means this featherboard can pretty much work with any tool that has a T-track or a miter slot. And here it is set up in the single configuration, where I have one set up in the miter track, putting pressure towards the fence, and one set up in the T-track on the fence, putting pressure down towards the table. And as you can see, this is how wood would pass through the machine. So that's it. The table's all set up. We're completely done. Now the only thing really to go over is to check out a few items that you're probably going to want to have now that you got your brand new precision router table fully assembled and upgraded. The first thing we're going to take a look at is bits. Now, if this is not your first router table, you probably have tons of them, but if this is your first router table and you're getting into routing, having a starter bit collection is probably something that's pretty nice to have. You can experiment with the different profiles and play around and see how the router table works and how the different cutting tools manipulate the shape of the wood. This kit right here is a pretty nice starter set. This is made by Yoniko, and I just picked this up online and they were fairly cheap. I believe they were less than 60 bucks. I've used them for a couple of years now, and I gotta say they've worked pretty well for everything I've done. Now, I'm not hardcore with the router, but I do enough work with hardwood that I could say the bits have definitely made it worth their money for at least the learning aspect of it. There are bits out there where a single bit can cost 3 times as much as this whole set. So if you're looking to learn, I highly recommend getting a kit like this. The next thing you're really going to want is something you probably already have, and that is a good square. Over time, you're going to want to make sure that this fence is still square to the table and that everything is calibrated. Now, there's lots of different squares and they all work just as equally good. So here's a nice carpenter square, we have a speed square, and even here is another framing square. Any of these can check the fence, just pick one and have it nearby. All right, so now you got everything squared away. You have your bit installed and you're ready to do some precision routing. So how do you go ahead and easily set the height or the distance from the fence for that matter? Well, there's lots of good ways of doing that. The first is something like these setup bars. Now, setup bars are nice. They come in fixed dimensions. So like this one's a 1/2 inch, but it goes all the way down to 1/8 of an inch. And they have a couple different ways of measuring. For instance, you can use this piece right here to measure how high off the surface of the table the bit is. You can use this side right here to measure how far the bit is off the fence. And you can use this top nub right here to actually measure if the actual depth of the cut you made is the depth that you want. So it's a pretty versatile little tool. The only issue with these setup bars is while they are fantastic, they are in fixed dimensions, so you're kind of limited to the exact dimension that the bar is, and they only come in a limited range of sizes. There is another option. Recently, I was introduced to these digital depth gauges, and this one's made by Wixey, which I've used some of their other products and they work great. And the way that this works is you can sit it over the edge of your bit to measure it. And as you can see, this goes way beyond the 1/2 inch of the bar set. So there's a lot more flexibility. Also, this isn't limited to the preset bar depths. So on this one, you can measure all the way from 0 up to about 3.3 inches. Now, you can also use this to do all the same measurements as the bars. You can use it to check depth, but it could also measure absolute. So if I was to take this little pin off the side and connect it on the back, I can now use it to measure the depth into a hole. It can do everything that the setup bars can do with a little bit more precision and a little bit more usable range. If you could buy both, having both is great. Now, if you only could buy one of these setup devices, I'd buy this one, the digital one, because this costs about 25 bucks, which is about half the price of the cheapest setup bar set, and it will do pretty much anything you need to measure. And that brings us to our final item, and that is a good push block. In this case, this is the GRR gripper. I use this on my table saw, and I'm looking forward to trying this out on this router table. And this is good for both straight cuts and also for freehand routing where you need to manipulate the board and keep a good friction hold on it. Not only is this a great item to have with your router setup, but it's also just a great item to have in your shop in general. So that wraps up part 5 in our 5-part series on the Kreg Precision Router Table. We've had a lot of fun putting it together, adding some upgrades, talking about some really useful accessories for it, and hopefully you got a lot out of learning about it with me. So this is by far the longest series we've done to date, and I hope everyone really enjoyed the content. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like us below. It really helps us out. And if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section. I'm always happy to answer them, and I try to get to them within 24 hours. So until next time, enjoy your new router table. I hope you create something really awesome. And when you do, and I'm sure you will, be sure to share it with us. So I took a look around, and what I found was this Dust Right duck bucket. It's a duck bucket.